I'll start off by saying we've had an unseasonably cold winter this year. Temperatures have been between -1 degree centigrade overnight and rising to 11 or 13 degrees during the day. The amount of daylight available for the plants has been quite small due to the almost constant cloud cover. This is our cauliflower crop for the year. You can see the plants are starting to put a bit of growth on now. After having been fed 3 times a day, they really like that amount of nutrient. For the first week they just sit there and do very little while they're producing some new roots. Then after that, after the first week, the roots start absorbing all the additional nutrient that they're getting and they start stacking on some growth. You can see there's some rather nice little plants there. Another one over there and a larger one. We haven't had a lot of sunlight this year. It's still been relatively cold, down to -1 degree at night and up to 13 during the day. But even with those limitations, the plants are still looking alright. Though they're a bit small, I would have expected them to be larger at this time of the year. But we'll check back in another fortnight and see what they look like. This is our winter crop once again, a fortnight after I shot the last lot. You can see they're growing along alright, starting to put a little bit of height on. We've had a lot of cold nights and not very warm days and not much blue sky or sunlight, but they are starting to put a little bit of size on. They're getting fed 2 or 3 times a day where possible, depending if it's warm enough. But they are growing, if somewhat slowly. This year's cauliflowers again. Another week later, you can see they're starting to seriously stack on a little bit of growth now. Though, nice sunshine today and it's going to be 16 degrees. But we've had a lot of nights at 1 degree and 11 during the day with a heavy cloud cover. And that's making it pretty hard for these plants to get any growth on them. But there are some really nice plants in here, not many of them, but a few. You can see the new leaves coming out of the centre there. And there's another large leaf coming out. And as we look across the back, there's another one. They're all looking relatively good, bearing in mind they're not as big as I thought they would be this time of the year because they haven't had much sunlight, but they're growing and that's the main thing. It appears that the original audio track on this section of the video was not recorded while I was shooting it, so I'll add a voiceover track. This section of the video was shot a week after the last one. You can see the plants are still growing, even if quite slowly. I'm hoping for some warmer weather after this cold front dissipates next week, which will help the plants to boost their sugars production during the day so that they can stack on some growth during the dormant night hours, because photosynthesis ceases when the temperature drops below 10 degrees centigrade. This summer I'm going to grow some lettuce plants in a new hydroponic setup. I will be using P.E.T soft drink bottles for the containers and volcanic scoria as a growing medium, the same as we grow our tomatoes in our Dutch bucket setup. Each bottle will link back to one of my nutrient reservoirs. I will be uploading a video of the build soon. I'll also be growing lettuce in our usual 75mm PVC pipe hydroponic setup. Our winter crop of cauliflowers are coming along. They're a lot slower than last year. They haven't had the sunlight or the temperature to boost them along. They're currently getting 4 feeds a day to try to catch them up a little bit, but they're only about half the size that they were last year. So I'm hoping that we can actually get a decent crop from them this year, but I've got my fingers crossed. I'm not too sure about that. Some of the plants are quite large and healthy, as you can see, but I would be happier if they were at least twice the size, because that would guarantee us a good crop this year. We're still eating last year's crop out of the freezer. There's still a few packets left, so we don't buy cauliflowers at all now. Throughout the year we produce enough to feed ourselves cauli. Virtually most meals that we have, if not a salad, we have cauliflower with it, and homegrown cauliflower just tastes really, really good. And this little punnet of lettuce here that I've just watered, I don't think they were watered yesterday, they look a little bit floppy, but they're going to be put into a row of P.E.T plastic bottles that I'm going to build along the back fence there, and I'll show you how I do that. And we will grow some lettuce in the PVC bottles. That's some broccoli over there in the same batch as the cauliflower. They're even a bit smaller because they're a little bit more isolated from the light, so how they will go I don't know. But this plant here is probably the healthiest of them all, with nice true leaves in it, looking alright. But I'll get round to shooting that other video pretty soon, the P.E.T bottle one, and we can see what that looks like. Also, this mess here is where we grow our tomatoes during the summer season. That's all the mess that's left over from setting up the other winter bench with the cauliflowers on it. That'll all have to be stripped out and rejigged for this year, and we'll have 40 Dutch buckets of truss tomatoes on there growing up to the ceiling and higher. Our winter veggies crop coming along, not looking too bad. Interestingly enough, it's 21 degrees in the barn today. That's the hottest it's been for a long time. We've been having 11, 12, maybe 13 degrees if we're lucky. So I'm now feeding the plants 5 times a day, because with the extra warmth and heat they'll be able to handle some extra nutrient. They're looking pretty good actually, considering how small they've been up until this point in time, but they're certainly putting some growth on now, and I think in a week or so's time, with the extra warmth that's here now, we'll see some pretty substantial growth. I hope so, because they're a bit late on where they're supposed to be. You might remember that the first batch of seeds we put down this year failed to germinate, so these plants are 6 weeks smaller than the plants were at the same time last year. This video was shot a week after the last episode went up, episode number 1. I've been working on the cauliflowers again this morning. Heavy wind lately has pushed some of them over, so they've all now been restaked and tied up. And I've just had a feed. That's a nutrient you can hear running back into the reservoir. The plants are looking all right now. The first cauliflower flowers have actually started to appear. I'll take an individual photo of that and put it up to show you. They're still very small, but they are there. You can see I've got a piece of bamboo there with some black cloth tied round it, supporting the plant. So I'm still hoping to get a reasonable crop of cauliflowers this year, even though they were planted later than usual. But they're coming along and looking all right. These are our winter collies that you've been watching for a period of time now, seeing how they grow. They're finally getting a bit of a move on. The temperature's warmed up. It's 24.1 at the moment. It's been 16, 15 and 14 for far too long now, so the plants are finally getting a bit of growth about them. They're currently getting fed 5 times a day. Keep the nutrient level up to them. However, I'm making some modifications to the barn. As you can see here, there's some new superstructure going up there. We discovered from the council that our barn is 0.25 of a square metre too large to have a non-permeable roof on. So what I'm doing is I'm removing 2 feet of the length of the barn, and we can then keep the roof on, which is pretty important so we can work in here if it's raining, etc, etc. You'll notice a power cable over there so that the pump is not connected at this point of time. So what I'm doing is I'm having to hand water, which isn't a problem. It just takes some time. I'm using this jug for the hand watering and pouring a litre of nutrient into each of the plants one at a time as I go along. And I'd work my way up the row to the next one. And you can see how big the plants are becoming. And down in here, you can see one of the cauliflowers. And down here you can see one of the cauliflowers. They're starting to get a little bit of size about them, not very much, but still not much bigger than a thumbnail, but they are certainly starting to grow along. Alright, I'll finish watering these collies, then we'll go and start setting up some Dutch buckets. Not a bad day today, it's quite warm actually. 21.3 in the barn down here. You can see things are sort of really getting a move on now. I would estimate we've probably got about another 6 weeks before it gets too hot for the collies, and then they'll start to bolt. But in the meantime, they're coming along rather nicely, and we're actually going to get some nice sized collies out of them, I think. Here's one down here, looking all right, and they're running all the way across. There's a nice large one. So they're looking pretty good actually, considering they were about 6 weeks late when they went in. Let's see what's down in here. That's a tiny one. Alright, so that's not looking too bad. They've just been watered. As you can see, they get watered 5 times a day at the moment because the temperature's getting up a bit. So, all things being equal, we'll actually get some cauliflowers this year, I think. There's a little guy just starting off. And one's over the back are too far away. I don't want to snap leaves off looking for them. There's a nice big one though. Pull that leaf back a bit. A winter veggies growing on the bench over here. The cauliflowers that are running a little bit late, but they're putting on a bit of serious amount of growth at the moment, which is very nice to see. So they're starting to pick up. We've had some quite warm days lately, and the humidity is not too bad. They're currently getting 5 feeds a day because I'm building a new back wall there. The pump hasn't been connected, so I'm doing it manually. So that's taking a bit of time to do all that, and all the new tomatoes that I've just put in. But you can see they're starting to look pretty decent size. Nice big tall leaves on them. Those leaves will be used to cover up the flowers as they get larger so that they don't get sunburned and they don't open up, the heads stay nice and tight. There they are, looking rather healthy. These are our collies, our winter veggie collies that we're growing. You can see how substantially good they are at the moment. Nice and warm here today, 26.8. They're getting 5 feeds a day at the moment, and they're really picking up some growth after having been 6 weeks late when we planted them, and I was worried whether we were going to get a crop or not. But I think we're going to do all right actually. A nice sized collie coming along down in there. All the plants have got collies in them now, some larger, some smaller, but that's probably the biggest one we've got at the moment. But you can see that they're individual plants, the leaves, how big they are now. Look at the size of that, and they're very thick, very, very thick. So they're producing lots of sugars to produce the new crop of flowers. Our winter veggies cauliflower crop that we've been following for a while now. Huge big leaves on them, absolutely massive. Look at the size of that leaf. That is a serious size leaf. Big leaves everywhere. The cauliflower themselves are getting a move on. I'll show you this one down here. Looking alright, that's getting a move on. All got heads in them now, some of them are smaller. I think that's round about the biggest one. No, it's not. Take a look at this one here. This is the biggest one we've got at the moment. All the rest have got smaller flowers in them, but they're seriously coming along. Another one in here, looking rather nice. So we're getting down towards the end of the season on these. There's another big one over there. That's starting to open up a little bit. That's why I've broken a leaf and put it over the top to keep the sun off it. The winter cauliflower crop is coming along. It's actually getting a little bit warm for them at the moment. So I've started breaking leaves down over the top. That's a nice tight head on that one. Break that leaf and put it down to keep the sun off it. A couple of them are getting pretty close. They're still small, but I'll be taking them off pretty soon. You can see that the head is starting to open up on it. Not as tight as it should be. I'll snap that leaf and stretch it across the top. Here's one that's a lot larger that's really starting to open up. I'll be cutting that one off today and taking that upstairs and we'll blanch it. There's another very nice tight head over here on that one. And I saw somewhere, there's another one, looking very nice. And I saw somewhere, there we go, that one there, the heat's got at that one and it's opened it up completely. Looks more like broccoli. So I'll cut that one up too. It's still edible, but it doesn't look as good as they're supposed to do. And here's one that seriously bolted, that one has, so that one will be cut out today too. But it's starting to warm up, and that's the problem. They prefer 12-13 degree days, and at the moment it's 20.5. You'll notice I've put 50% shade cloth back up on the roof again to try to keep a little bit of sunlight, direct sunlight off the collies. So I don't know how much of effect that's going to happen because it's pretty late in the season. I better snap a leaf over that one. I'll get those couple cut out and we'll keep an eye and see. I think we've only probably got about a week left for the plants. After that, they'll all be starting to bolt. Well, this is nearly the end of the winter veggies. It's 24.3 degrees in the barn today, which is too hot for them. And as you can see, they're starting to open up. So that would have been a fair size head if it hadn't sort of started to open up already. But they're all in that condition. Here's another one that's smaller, but the heat has got to them. Even though I've got 50% shade cloth on the roof, it's still very hot. It keeps the direct sun off the flowers, but it doesn't stop the temperature getting hot inside here. So I'll pull those ones out today. So I'll take them upstairs later on, and Georgie will blanch them tonight, and then we'll put them into the freezer to keep them for next year. Small one, hardly worth the effort on that, but we'll let that go for a little while. It's still a very nice tight head, but how long it'll last I don't know. But anyway, I'll be cutting the other ones off and taking them up inside today. And then it'll be just a matter of cleaning up the scoria and putting our next crop in. We've got some chili plants that are going in here and a couple of other different varieties of vegetables that we don't normally grow. We want to see how well they come along. This will be the last video in the Winter Veggies Cauliflower series. The second lot of seeds were planted 6 weeks too late after the first lot of seeds failed to germinate. The cauliflowers are starting to open up and lose the tight heads we've grown in previous years. Even though I've put 50% shade cloth on the roof of the barn and have been bending leaves over the actual cauliflowers to keep the sun off them. The temperature is now too hot for the cauliflowers. It's 25 plus degrees most days, and cauliflowers prefer about 12 to 14 degrees when grown in Victoria. I'm going to look at repotting some dual orchids that I've picked up recently from various places online. They all seem to be in relatively good nick. Nice Macotes there, and some discolour.